Good afternoon. Thank you, Kamala. Thank you for those kind words. Quite a lengthy as well introduction. You're seeing me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it seems like we were having some power shedding here in a bit. So I was wondering if it affects the internet. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's a pleasure being here. I know it was a long day, so I will try to be as brief and as practical as possible. Um, what Kamla had missed in her introduction, and I recently took up, I'm actually serving on two World Bank funded projects, one UNICEF and one IDB. The IDB and UNICEF are COVID response projects, so that have had me quite busy over the last couple of months. Um, and it was interesting procurement methodology and the operations in this whole um, pandemic season. It brought out some true colors of some people here, I can tell you. So it's quite interesting and exciting as we go on. Um, a lot of that I've said throughout the day, including what Andrea said earlier this morning and Afra in particular, they spoke about the integrity and the political will that is needed um, to protect procurement officer from undue pressure. Um, with what I have put together 7 elements that I consider important to protect the public procurement officer. Um, Most importantly, all of them takes takes into consideration the political will. It is important. Without the political will, whatever I have to say and elaborate on would make sense. There must be a clear commitment by political actor on transparency, anti-corruption, leadership, management, and accountability. That by itself will take a lot of pressure off a public procurement officer when it's coming from a top-down approach in this instance. Even if there are political pressure, there must be a mechanism and recourse for the protection of the employee. There must be some mean of recourse. It leads into the security of tenure for an employee. And an employee must feel the right of employment. It is right for a guaranteed permanent employment, even if they have to question something, like someone asked earlier about being alive or live after a whistleblower. And I know how that can be, but sometimes you have to stand up for what is right. Even if you are feeling the pressure of the hierarchy asking you to do something, in my case, even though I'm wrong, even though I know they are wrong, if it's a conflict to the rules, regulation, procedures, whatever they are, I will document it to them and say and highlight my position. And if they insist, but I will say that you are my superior and I will execute. However, this is my position. And most times when you document it, they will tell you forget about it, because you created that record. I've been told this very early in my career to CYA means cover your, and you know what the A is for. So since then I have developed the habit of documenting um, instructions. They must be equitable and adequate salary and remuneration. This was serve as a barrier against bribery and corruption, because undue pressure don't only come from within the organization. It can come from external forces. It can come from suppliers. It can come from somebody who has some political affiliation and these things. So if an organization is paying their employee an adequate, equitable salary and remuneration, it will deter to form as a barrier against them accepting a bribe or trying. trying to involve in corruption, because you cannot want to pay a public procurement officer peanuts, because they are the one who are more or less in charge of spending your money, ensure value for money. And I can remember when I was working at Georgetown Hospital, where I worked for 13 years, I was in charge for a $1 billion operation, and my salary was barely a couple thousand US dollars. Maybe about $1,500 actually, and I was running an operation in tens of billions of Guyana dollar. And these are the things you raise with them. But as time go by, we are changing, thankfully. Also, an employee, an officer should feel a sense of empowerment and be being involved as a team player. There must be disciplined procedure. There's a right, an employee must feel the right to respond. If they are given an instruction in whatever it is, they must have this comfort that they can respond to it, whether it's oral or verbal. There must be this environment that is conducive for this. Respect to the rule of law. Importantly, an integrity pack, which includes all officer of the state. It's a tool for preventing corruption in public contracting. It's a public party agreement entered into by a public body seeking to procure goods and services of significant value. The company interested in bidding to supply the goods and service, and the third-party organizations such as civil society group. So once you have these people, once you have the relevant officers being signed this declaration, it helps you to, it commits to prevent corruption. It can help, there is no benefit obtained by an employee, like alluded to earlier, bribe and corruption. Treat all bidder with equity and reason. Identify fraud and suspicion. And an independent external monitor. So in the integrity pact, there must be mechanism that includes monitoring. To protect, also importantly, I mean, in our society and this part of the world, where there is blockchain, the recording of digital recording of transaction and information, in a way to make it difficult or impossible to change, hack, cheat the system. In the 21st century, where technology has become, since COVID, we see everything is happening more or less virtually, so much meetings. We anticipate the way to go. I guess we were not the technology, we are not adapting to the technology fast enough. So I guess COVID, one of the benefit, like I think Afra said earlier, there's always a silver lining. One of the benefits of this is that we can move forward with electronic means of inventory, electronic procurement, and these sorts of things, which will aid in protecting an officer. In an old manual system, right now, I'm dealing with a review of I'm an evaluation committee nominated by the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board. And I know of a bidder from past experience of evaluating projects where they do a perfect document. So this time now I'm evaluating a proper constructed bidding document. This time I'm going through and I saw a couple of documents are omitted, like an affidavit of ownership for equipment. This is a construction, road works actually. And I was like, it surprises me. So then I asked for the usually here we supply a bid in original and 2 copies. So the original came to me, and then I asked for the copy, only to find out that the document were actually removed from the original because it was in the copy. So in a manual system, these are the risks. In a blockchain system, in a system where there are e-procurement, it will be extremely difficult to manipulate these documents, and in a sense that will aid in protecting an officer from undue pressure. Procurement system and robust policy, procedures, law, guidelines, best practices, these are all needed. So we have because if you have an ad hoc fragmented, like we have in some cases here, it leaves, there is no standard way of doing things. So you will find every agency using different methodology in evaluation. They will ask for different criteria. There's not a baseline. So you will, like I asked earlier this morning on the type of criteria that should not be waived at no time, that should be submitted. And here you will find it all differently. Like for example, if someone, that is in the case that I alluded to where the document was missing for the affidavit of equipment, is it material enough for non-responsive bidder? I don't think so, but the person was disqualified. But then obviously that was weighed out when we look at the copy of the document. A procurement system will enact in the rule the person shall be in discipline. It can be enact in the rules that a person shall be disciplined, demoted, suspended, deny benefits. So I'm saying that if someone failed to adhere to the laws, the policies, the procedure, whatever you put in place, there must be a form mechanism, not just a slap on the wrist or transfer them to another department or something. There must be a mechanism to deal with severely disciplinary measures. There's one that a policy that is adopted in Brazil, where they rotate procurement officers across agency. So they have a standard system in place. So they all across the procurement regulations and in all cities and towns, wherever they have one standardized procedure. So what they basically do at intervals, I think it's at intervals of 6 months, they would rotate the procurement officer to various agency, state-owned agency. In that way, they don't get comfortable. They don't end up building this intimate relationship with bidders, or even if colleagues in their office, where they can end up colluding with heads and various authority. So that brings the 7th point that I think should be considered in protecting a public procurement officer. It's the political will, security of tenure, disciplinary procedure, integrity pack, a blockchain system, a procurement system where the e-procurement and the various rules and regulation, and rotation of the procurement officer. It can be very difficult. Like, for example, of recent, in this whole response to COVID, I had to do a procurement of 1,022 laptops to distribute it across the country to teachers to aid in virtual. So the methodology that we used was the restrictive tendering. So we went to every premium, we did a market analysis. We went to, and based on work that was done across various projects and the Ministry of Education, based on their recommendation, we went to every premium supplier in the market. So our evaluation report went to the National Procurement Tender Board. It was above their limit, so they had to send it to the cabinet. When it went to the cabinet says, the cabinet has withhold their objection and advised that we go out to an open tender. Now, the reason why we go restrictive, it's taking into consideration the time, because it's an emergency response, it's a pandemic. Time is going, we need to get this computer. Supply chain around the world was disrupted because of COVID. So we need to fast track because if you want to escalate the teaching because of COVID or the virtual classes, it means we have to escalate the procurement. Now they decided that we should go public. But the question, so when they asked me to go public, I said, I would like you, why would you want to go public? Tell me which other supplier you intend to attract. Potential supplier you intend to attract that we did not go out to. Because I think it's about 8 or 9 suppliers we went to, premium, who has the capacity to supply, the track record and everything. Please tell me which one single supplier we missed that could have fulfilled this obligation. They couldn't have answered me. So I said to them, listen, what will happen? If you choose to go down this way, I will consider the process compromised and I will resign from this project. Well, they said to me to put it on hold, but there are a few procurement officers who will want to take those positions. Because sometimes you could lose your job for it and so many other things can happen. And those are things some of us can't really risk. Because I mean, sometimes honesty don't pay bills.